business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Might help if I unmute the mic. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid-lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings broadcast, and I am your deep investigative host, at least for tonight, Rick. So tonight there were a couple of pretty decent revelations that happened last week, and it was kind of glossed over, honestly, by the mainstream media, and it's going to continue to be glossed over by the mainstream media, probably due in large part to what it might mean for one of their favorite daughters. Anyway, the point that I'm making tonight is that there is a lot of information that I've got to go through, and to be honest, I mean, I've tried to organize it as best I can, but please forgive me if I get a little discombobulated in trying to find all of this, because this is a huge, huge amount of information. Before I get into that, though, I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers. I have broken the 100, the century mark on Rumble this past week, due in large part to one of my favorite fans, Buddy. He has really helped me out by pushing the channel, pushing it in his other social media groups, and things like that. And so because of that, and also because of all the Catriots that have jumped on to the Rumble and jumped onto the channel, thank you very much. I do appreciate it. I am working really hard to bring some incredible content to you, and you could do me a favor, a big favor. Not like I have any means, I have no reason to be asking anything further of you other than to subscribe. However, if all of you would just reach out to 10 people on your list, if you haven't already done so, just reach out to 10 people on your list. If I can get just one single one of those 10, I will double in size. So that's my ask of you. Help to promote the channel. Do me the favor. Make sure you talk to people who might find this interesting. And let's get this channel to grow, because I'll be honest with you, I was walking around today, and I was hit with an epiphany. And, you know, I've been doing this for almost 2 years, and that's really, really small in relative terms. To be able to go and hit the 100 mark is a huge milestone, for me anyway, because for a long time there, not getting enough action on the live streams and that kind of stuff, I mean, I'll be honest with you, it was a little disappointing, a little disconcerting, because I felt like my messages were getting out there, but not getting out to the right people. And then I found Rumble, and Rumble caters to those who are interested in free speech, who are interested to hear other points of view, who are interested in understanding what is going on that is outside of the mainstream media. And because of that step out, I have actually gained more followers, twice as many followers on Rumble as I have on YouTube. YouTube is sitting at roughly around 52 right now, and I'm not knocking them, okay? I understand they have other policies. They've banned some conservatives in the past. I'm flying under the radar right now. I will stay over there for as long as I can. If you are a subscriber over on YouTube, I thank you as well, because getting this show going and bringing good content to you is my important purpose, because without you, there would be no show. Honestly, if I was just speaking out to an audience of nothing, that would tend to get a little boring after a while. So I want to make sure that I'm bringing you good content. The only way that I know that I'm bringing good content to my viewership is if you subscribe and you interact, whether it's in the chat talking during the live streams, or even leaving me comments down below the videos. Let me know how I'm doing. Let me know what's going on. I know the Catriots. I try to get into the Catriot shows, the Mark K show, and I try to jump in the chat. And so I've been hearing from the Catriots there. They've been talking to me, and I definitely appreciate that. I appreciate the show suggestions and those kinds of things. I mean, just about everything I appreciate for what you do, because, again, without you, there wouldn't be any kind of a show. So it was inspiring to me because being able to break the 100 mark has actually made it to where I'm starting to feel like this is really where I'm supposed to be. This is what I am supposed to do. I am supposed to bring you content, bring you the conservative thought process, bring you stories and angles and points of view that deal with Americans and Americana, because I am an American patriot. I identify as such. And although I'm not, I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm extreme right wing, because there's problems with those right wing folks. But I'm more of a pragmatist, more of a constitutionalist than any kind of a Republican. And so I'm just trying to bring to you level-headed conversation about topics that are going on in this country in today's world. And a special shout out, thank you, buddy, for reminding me on the Rumble channel, Rumble Chats. A special shout out to the Salty Army. The Salty Army. I have literally no idea who these people are, but they apparently have an attachment with through Buddy to this show. And so thank you very much again. I can't thank all of you enough. If you like what I'm doing, please do me a favor. The best thing you can do is reach out to your friends, to your neighbors, to anyone who is interested, who wants to come and look at the show. You can come and sit on the live stream. Live streams are awesome, but also don't forget that the live streams are recorded on both Rumble and YouTube. You can go and look at them later if you end up missing the live streams. Now, the next thing, I have been promoting this. You saw the logo on my startup screen. I've been promoting this. I have worked with a friend of mine. We have launched a internet digital radio station. This is a big thing for us. We are attempting to do what nobody else has really done in radio. We are bringing together artists that are not quite mainstream, that are just below the surface, but are still selling out venues. We are mixing blues, rock, fusion. We're trying, listening to the artists that are new and trying something different. If you think about it in the way of like football, it's sort of like the college level of people. They're doing great things, but they haven't quite bought into the whole pro set yet. And so they're doing different things with their sounds. They're still exploring. They're still kind of growing themselves. And so this is really, really good. Really good for these people. And, this internet radio station, this has been a dream of the founder. And he has put a lot of work into this. I am just being drug along as the technical person, because I've been able to do, all of this. And he thought that it would be a good fit. I enjoy the music, and so it's really, really great. The Salty Cracker on Rumble apparently is another channel. Well, give a shout out to them. And just, yeah, I mean, seriously, let's push this. Let's use me as your conduit to going to putting out the Patriot message. Okay, let's go ahead and do that. But I wanted to bring that up to everybody's attention. Breaking 100 is awesome. I want to next stop. Let's start at 120. Let's move on to 150. I want to get to 200. I want to grow. I want to grow and be big. You guys have inspired me, and you've energized me. So, all right. Next item on the list is I need to give a shout out to one of my people that are one of my affiliates that I put out, And of course, as always, it is an American affiliate. Let me make sure I get the right one. Yes. All right. The Institute on the Constitution. So let's talk about this. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed through primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government, as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, theamericanview.com/# or hashtag Whiskey Musings to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course materials and information. My affiliate link, once again, is theamericanview.com /# Whiskey Musings to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's theamericanview, all one word, all lowercase, .com /# Whiskey Musings. Go check them out today. And I thank them for allowing me to be a affiliate for them. Now, I'm going to get another. All right. So, as always, I have the other part of the Patriot Network, and that is on this day in American history. All right, and today's coming from the American Patriots Almanac. Let me get this in the space so you guys can see the American Patriots Almanac. This is a national bestseller. It's now been revised and updated, so on and so forth. You can get it on Amazon. I'm not receiving any money for any of that, but let's look. You know what? This show, I talk about not only the good, but I also talk about the bad. And this, unfortunately, tonight's on this day in American history has something that, we really, as Americans, we really shouldn't be proud of this. On February 19th, 1942, in what is now considered to be one of the worst mistakes of his presidency, Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, which cleared the way for the internment of tens of thousands of people of Japanese descent. The order came 10 weeks after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Up and down the West Coast, posters appeared declaring all persons of Japanese ancestry, both alien and non-alien, will be evacuated. Some 110,000 Japanese Americans were uprooted and moved inland to internment camps in remote locations scattered across 7 states. Nearly 2/3 of these evacuees were actually American citizens. Security concerns prompted the drastic step. The U.S. government worried that the people of Japanese ancestry might be spying for Japan. Mexico and Canada took similar actions. But the ugly truth is that hysteria and racism were also at work. Many Americans, with images of burning ships and dead sailors at Pearl Harbor seared in their minds, looked at Japanese Americans and saw the enemy. Many internees spent 2.5 years in the camps, which were hastily constructed miniature cities full of wooden barracks and surrounded by barbed wire. After the war, they faced the task of rebuilding their lives. In no way can the internment camps be compared with the Nazi concentration camps or Stalin's Gulag, where millions actually died. But the terrible fact remains that loyal Americans who had done no wrong lost their property and, temporarily at least, their liberty. It is an ugly blot on our nation's history. In 1988, President Reagan, one of my favorites, signed a law that offered a national apology to Japanese Americans and $20,000 to each person who had been interned in the camps. And that is our On This Day in American History from the American Patriots Almanac. That's kind of interesting. My little Post-it notes up here obviously are hitting the green screen color close enough to be able to take that out. But anyway, all right. You know, the ugly truth is that we have, you know, we have some ugliness in our history. We really do. And one of those happens to have to deal with the office of the president. Now, you know, we have a common theme here. We have a common thought process that we put our politicians and especially the office of the president up on a pedestal. There's been throughout history, there's been several scandals. Scandals that some have reached, you know, epic proportions and others have not. I mean, you've got JFK, who has been, not only was he assassinated, which was bad enough as it was, but there was also reports of him sneaking women into the White House to have trysts with them. You've got, you know, Bill Clinton of more recent history, where he had his little, you know, sexual encounters with the White House interns and things like that. There's always been some scandal. And the reason for that has to deal with, honestly, the fallibility, not infallibility, but the fallibility of man. And one of those things I think we're actually seeing right here, right now, in history. We are in history right here, right now. Okay? And one of the things that has happened in the past that sort of indicates things in terms of today happens to be one of the greatest and most well-known political scandals that we have heard about in sorry, one of the chatters hit me up with something that's really funny. Anyway, you know, one of the things that we've had in our past history, but is still regarded as today one of the biggest political scandals of our time, and it is studied in history, in American history. I'm going to go ahead and bring up, let's hope I get this right. All right. This is a view of the Watergate complex. Now, for those of you young people who may not remember Watergate, Watergate was a huge, huge scandal. So this photo was taken in 1972, just shortly after or shortly sometime around the Watergate scandal. And so let me go ahead and pull this up. So this is off of the FBI's Federal Bureau of Investigation's history to basically explain it. And essentially what it is in the early morning hours of June 17th, 1972, there was a night guard who was at the DC hotel and the office complex and was making his rounds when he suspiciously noticed there was a taped open exit door. He alerted authorities and set off a series of events that would forever change the nation. So what happened essentially was there was a break-in at the Democrat National Committee's or headquarters offices, which used to be in the Watergate building. And at the time, you know, it was just, at first it was just a break-in. And, you know, then it became more of a national scandal as more information came to light. For an example, one of the people who were arrested after they were caught in the middle of it, one of the people that were arrested was the security officer for the committee to reelect then President Nixon. And, you know, Nixon was a Republican president, and it was clear, honestly, from the beginning that there was something kind of amiss here. And ultimately what ended up happening with Watergate was that as the events unfolded over the course of approximately 2 years, Nixon was brought up on charges. He was in the process of being impeached by the House of Representatives, and it essentially made it to where ultimately on August 8th in 1974, President Nixon resigned from the presidency. One of the, can't remember if he's the only one who has resigned, but he is certainly one of the main ones, or one of the most well-known ones, to have resigned his presidency. Now, the funny thing about this is that when you look at this, okay, yes, there's possible evidence. Of course, after his resignation, the impeachment got dropped because obviously there's no reason to continue the impeachment, et cetera, et cetera. But here's the thing, though, is that right now there is a special counsel going on. And if you remember back in 2016, 2017, 2018, and that kind of stuff, we had the Mueller investigation. Now, special counsels are basically pulled from the U.S. Attorney's Office, and these special counsels are given quite a bit of leeway to investigate crimes that have been committed with our U.S. government. And they usually are given a lot of leeway. Well, here recently, now that the Mueller investigation is over into Trump, just to kind of recall that the Mueller investigation concluded with the idea that nothing further should be taken against Trump. That although there was evidence there of something, it wasn't enough, it wasn't conclusive, it wasn't something that they wanted, that the special counsel at the time, Robert Mueller, would have continued with, mainly because of the fact that it was a sitting president. So in other words, the bar to try and get this guy, at the time Trump, was not high enough to be able to continue down the path. Now, that didn't stop Nancy Pelosi and the House of Representatives from trying to get this guy, to throw in the hat and try to impeach the man. And unfortunately, unfortunately or fortunately, whichever way you want to go, it was never going to get past the Senate. And just real quick in terms of how the impeachment process goes, the House of Representatives impeaches the president and recommends, removal or possibly criminal charges, etc. The Senate then tries them and decides whether or not the sitting president has to be removed. And the Senate at the time basically said, you know what? Yeah, we're not going to do it. I mean, what you are doing does not reach the constitutional definition of high crimes and misdemeanors. And so because of that, the Senate absolved him of that. Well, of course, we ended up with the Democrats trying to get him again. And they've tried him twice. The Senate said no way, and they shot the whole thing down. But this is something that's really concerning to a lot of people. And the reason why I say this is, number one, the mainstream media is not really publishing any of this. We're getting these from more right-wing outlets. And although the mainstream media is kind of poo-pooing this is when you start realizing that maybe there's a little more to this than meets the eye, because the mainstream media, as we've seen over the course of the last 5-6 years, is catering and pandering to the Democrat Party. So because of that, this is really focused. This is something that we should really, really focus on. And it brings to light some things that I think are really a big problem. Now, in terms of, how we've gotten this far. So one thing that you have to understand with lawyers and things like that is that we have to start with one thing. And if you remember back in the old days, you know, the reason why they brought down some of the big mobs in New York had nothing to do with the illegal criminal activity that they were doing, other than they were gotten and defeated by tax evasion. It was a very small and honestly meaningless type of thing in the grand scheme of things, because they had been accused of killing people, extortion, racketeering, all kinds of stuff. But it all started with the idea of the IRS and tax evasion. And that's how it started. That's why you got into the RICO cases. So this one started, the Durham investigation started with a guy by the name of Igor Danchenko. And he was charged with lying on an affidavit. And then that led to the charge of Michael Sussman. And Michael Sussman, for those that don't recall, Michael Sussman was key in a key lawyer in the Clinton campaign, in Hillary for president, I think is what they call it. But he was a key lawyer. He was going to be a key part of the Clinton White House should she have gotten elected. And he was also key in the whole DNC Russian hacking scenario thing that with the emails and all this other stuff that came on. So the thing about it is, though, is that Durham grabbed Igor first, Danchenko first. He's gotten a hold of Sussman. And now, as a part of this Sussman investigation, and one thing that you have to understand is that a lot of times these lawyers will not go to trial or convene a grand jury if they don't actually think they have a case. There isn't any reason, there isn't any reason to bring a case to the grand jury to show, hey, can we bring this to trial, if you don't have any evidence, okay? So if there wasn't something here, then he wouldn't be doing the things that he's doing, which is part of what Robert Mueller did. Robert Mueller went after a bunch of people. He did go after a bunch of folks, and some of them, like Roger Stone and Mike Flynn, General Flynn, have been exonerated in subsequent things that have happened. Okay, so realistically, this is something that we need to watch. Now, on February 11th, Durham filed a motion to inquire into potential conflicts of interest in the Michael Sussman indictment. And the reason for that is because of the fact that Michael Sussman had dealings with a counsel, and has a counsel, his current counsel, Latham and Watkins, that is, he's had dealings with them in the past, but Latham and Watkins has also defended and represented Perkins Coie, which was part of the 2016 Russian collusion hoax, and Mark Elias as a part of the investigation. And so what Durham is doing is Durham is basically saying, hey, Michael Sussman, you may not want to have these lawyers represent you. And the reason being is because we actually know something about them. Now, he doesn't go into a lot of detail, but he gives enough detail to give us an idea of what might be going on. Now, I grabbed the motion. Okay, I grabbed the motion. I've highlighted a few things, but before I go any further, I've got to give a hat tip to a guy by the name of Technofog. He runs a Substack, and Technofog has been all over this. Okay, all over this. And this is one of his articles that he's put out. I've got, again, everything I have is linked in the show notes. Go to the show notes. You'll get all the links. In fact, I even threw in a bunch of links that I'm probably not going to be able to get to tonight. But that being said, so what's happening here is Sussman is charged with giving false statements to the then FBI General Counsel James Baker regarding the interests he was represented in pushing to the FBI about an Alpha Bank Trump Organization connection. Okay. So here's the thing. The whole case, as far as the idea that Trump was colluding with the Russians, hinges on two things. One of them being the evidence, or the dossier, the Steele dossier, that was primarily taken from Danchenko. Danchenko's the one that told Steele the information, or provided Steele the information, and it turns out that Steele was paid to get that information. Now, Sussman may or may not have known this. This is allegations, but Sussman actually worked as an IT lawyer, so he understands a little bit of the technology behind it. And I'll get to the technology here in just a minute, but he provided information supposedly to the FBI first, and he about a connection, what he called a secret transmission between Trump Tower and other places and this Russian-owned organization called Alpha Bank. And I'll get into the details as kind of what that transmission is in just a minute. But the thing is that they're trying to tie and provide evidence of a link between the Trump organization and the Russians. And it turns out that this motion has some information in it with regards to some of the information that was provided as a part of this to the FBI originally. Now, Dan Bongino is all over this. He is covering this. He's got a couple of books out about it. He's been saying all along that this is all a hoax. And if you get a chance to read his Follow the Money, go ahead and do so. I think he's also got Spygate and Exonerated as well. You know, go and get those books and read. He's really delved into this. Technofog is diving into this as well. But the thing is that with this motion, what Durham is doing is basically saying, hey, Michael Sussman, you may not want to have Latham and Watkins represent you, because I potentially have information that Latham and Watkins are going to be part of the investigation down the road. Now, he's not saying that 100% clearly, so I'm just going to throw that out there. He's not saying that 100%, but it's what he says that kind of gives us an indication as to what might be going on. And if you'll give me just a second, I'm going to pull up like I said, a lot of information here. I got to bring, okay. So, Sussman, the indictment itself is alleging that beginning on July 2016, Tech Executive One, who we now know is a gentleman by the name of Joffe, had worked with the defendant, meaning he's worked with Sussman, and a U.S. investigative firm retained by Law Firm One, which we now know is the Latham folks, on behalf of the Clinton campaign. And so what's happening here is he's also saying numerous cyber researchers, which we find out are dealing with Harvard University, and employees at multiple internet companies to assemble the purported data and the white papers. So here's one of the key points. In connection with these efforts, Tech Executive One, Joffe, exploited his access to non-public and/or proprietary internet data. Tech Executive One also enlisted the assistance of researchers at a U.S.-based university, who we now know as Harvard, who were receiving and analyzing large amounts of internet data in connection with a pending federal government cybersecurity research contract. So in other words, the university was being brought in by Tech Executive One's firm and was mining through all of this data that Tech Executive One provided them in order to gain a contract with the federal government. Okay. Now, Tech Executive One tasked the researchers to mine the internet data to establish, and this is quotes, an inference and a narrative, okay, tying then candidate Trump to Russia. In doing so, Tech Executive One indicates that he was seeking to please certain VIPs, referring to individuals at the Latham law firm and the Clinton campaign. Now, this is all outlined in the original Sussman indictment form. All of this is outlined there. So basically what's happening is this tech executive, Jaffe, provided a bunch of information over to Harvard, telling them, hey, see if you can find things to tie in the Clinton campaign and Russia. Okay. And then he's also, because of the fact that he's seeking to please both the law firm and the Clinton campaign. Now, the government, Durham continues here and says the government's evidence at trial will also establish that among the internet data that Tech Executive One and his associates exploited was domain name service internet traffic pertaining to a healthcare provider, the Trump Tower, Donald Trump's Central Park West apartment building, and the executive office of the President of the United States. Now, this is key, and I'm going to explain a little bit of what this is in just a minute. But Tech Executive One's employer, Internet Company One, had come to access and maintain dedicated servers for the executive office of the President as part of a sensitive arrangement whereby it provided DNS resolution services to the EOP. Tech Executive One and his associates exploited this arrangement by mining EOP's DNS traffic and other data for the purpose of gathering derogatory information about Donald Trump. So let me go back real quick. All right. In order for you to understand just a little bit about what that means, okay? I'm going to get a little techie on you. I'm going to kind of geek out a little bit. Honestly, I can promise you this is what I do in my regular day. This is some of what I do in my regular day-to-day job, not the streaming thing, okay? But when you go onto the internet, every single device that is on the internet has what's called an internet address, okay? An IP, Internet Protocol address, an IP address. This address can take a couple of different forms, but the idea is that that address uniquely identifies that device, that location, etc. Now, in some cases, there are things that are going on like translation of IPs and stuff like that. So this information may not point directly to who inside, unless they get a hold of some of the routing data that might have happened at some of these locations. So unless they get a hold of that, they may or may not be able to know specifically who might or what machine might have done this. But the key here is, though, that they can actually trace it down to the IP address that was used by these locations. Now, for every IP address and for every request that goes out on the internet, machines do not understand things like www.google.com. They rely on a technology called Domain Name Service Resolution, DNS, okay? Now, domain names services are basically like a phone book. For those of you that are old enough to remember, they're basically like a phone book. They are machines that have, through processes, an entire listing of everywhere on the internet, both the readable name, which is the google.com name, and the IP addresses on the internet where that google.com resides. It's this service that allows us to type into our browsers the standard name of google.com, duckduckgo.com, markshow.com, any of those, and it allows the DNS, it sends a query out from the machine out to the DNS server. The DNS server looks up the IP address, provides that back to the machine, and then the machine then in turns, or the device, because phones do this too, but then the device then goes to that IP address in order to gain the information. This is common practice. This is the way the internet works in order to find the locations that you're going to. Just like you put in rumble.com, same thing. They have specific IP addresses that are resolved, and this is what DNS does. This is part of the reason why it may take a second or two sometimes when you type something in. If the DNS system doesn't recognize the name, it has to go and talk to other computers that may have that information that are all part of the domain name system. So what's happened here is Tech Executive 1 and his associates got a hold of all of these queries and requests. And each one of these queries and requests were then logged. The idea being that they would find some sort of a connection between the office of the president, the Trump Tower, Donald Trump's Central Park West apartment building, all of these places, to find out where people inside were going to try and communicate with. Now, this happens with emails. It happens with it's everything. Okay. It's not just browsers. Browser is the best way to do it, but this happens pretty much with everything on the internet, because not all IP addresses are the same. They don't always stay the same. Sometimes they change. And when they do, the DNS servers have to get updated. Okay. Now, okay. So if you understand that, and you've got me with this, so this is the information that was provided to the Harvard University by the Tech Executive 1, or Jaffe. Okay. Now, so there are a couple of things that you can do with this data. And one thing that can be done is what's called IP address. Oh, shoot. Now I've lost it. It's spoofing, IP address spoofing. Okay. So what you can do is there is a possibility that you can go and you can pretend to be something else. So you can take that IP address, the original IP, you can spoof it, and you can pretend that you are somebody else reaching out to the DNS servers to try and get this information. Now, I'm not suggesting that's what these people have done. Okay. I am not suggesting that. However, assuming that this information got thrown out there, there is a potential possibility that this is something that they may have done in order to get that information from the DNS servers and make it look like or appear that it's come from those locations based on IP address spoofing. Okay. Now, I see Broke Ass Redneck out here on Rumble is talking about routers. Routers direct the traffic once the IP address has been obtained. Okay. So the routers will have logs of where a packet might have come from and where it went to, and you can follow that throughout the internet in terms of the route. But that's not entirely the case. I mean, they do play a part, but they play a part at the IP level. Once DNS is already done and over with, they play a part on the IP level. Anyway, so the key thing here is that Michael Sussman allegedly provided information to the FBI that basically said, hey, these locations, I've got information, these locations are doing DNS requests for places in Russia, and therefore, in particular, the IP address is resolving to this place called Alpha Bank. And so we should take a look at this. I mean, you guys should investigate. And the problem is that, again, like I said, typically IP addresses are going to an outer wall, an outer interface, and the internal interface, it's translated from one system to another. And so the internal interface may or may not direct directly to somebody in particular. Okay. If they get a hold of the routers and the routing information, they may be able to identify what IP might have pulled that from the internal network. But generally speaking, all they're doing right now with the DNS request is they're pointing it to the specific location in terms of the EOP, Trump Tower, etc. Now, there's also, outside of the DNS servers that are out on the internet, we also have DNS servers that are internal as well that can help speed up the process by essentially caching information from the internet about popular sites. And so they might have some of that. I don't know. But if they do, that can actually indicate what internal IP might have been taken, because that DNS server would sit inside. And basically, think about it as like your own personal contact book for outside addresses, if you think of it that way. Now, so let me get back to this, to the motion. Okay. So the government's evidence here in this top yellow right here, the top up above. I can't go up that far. Anyway, the government's evidence at trial will establish that these additional allegations relied in part on the purported DNS traffic that Tech Executive One, Jaffe, and others had assembled pertaining to Trump Tower, Donald Trump's New York City apartment building, the EOP, and the aforementioned healthcare provider. In his meeting with Agency 2, okay, so this is the first time that we've seen Agency 2, and I've got something on this, so hold on, just keep that in mind. The defendant provided data which he claimed reflected purportedly suspicious DNS lookups by those entities of IP addresses that were affiliated with a Russian mobile phone provider. Okay. He claimed that these demonstrated that Trump and his associates were using supposedly rare Russian-made wireless phones in the vicinity of the White House and other locations. So the defendant claimed that because he saw these DNS lookups going to Russian mobile phone provider, okay, this provider one, he's claiming, Sussman is claiming, that this proves that Trump and his team and his associates were reaching out to these other Russian places, okay? In the special counsel's office, so Durham goes on and says the special counsel's office has identified no support for these allegations. In fact, after it gets more complete DNS data that they obtained from a company that assisted Jaffe in assembling these allegations, it reflects that such DNS lookups were far from rare inside the United States. So in other words, Sussman says, hey, these are rare. These are going to something, Russian phones. This is a problem. Well, because it's rare. Well, it's not rare, according to what Durham is saying here. So according to the more complete data, but did not provide, again, to Agency 2, okay, it reflected that there were a total of more than 3 million lookups of Russian phone provider IP addresses that originated with US-based IP addresses. And fewer than 1,000 of these lookups originated with IP addresses affiliated with Trump Tower. Now, what does this mean? Well, out of 3 million lookups going to supposedly Russian phone IP addresses that for the Russian phone provider, that now you have fewer than 1,000 of these 3 million lookups actually originated from essentially Trump Tower. Now, let me tell you a little bit of something about how these things work. If I visit a website, say rumble.com, and I get ads that pop up in the sidebars of that website, those ads are also generating DNS lookups for things like, where do I pull information for the ad? Where do I get the image that I want to show? Where do I put the link and how to find the link for whatever ad that I'm showing? So here's the thing. These lookups that happened might not even have anything to do with a particular website or a specific communication going to Russia, okay? It's entirely possible, and this happens all the time, that these people in Trump Tower looked up a website. That website had ads on the sides that pointed to these IP addresses. So again, this is all essentially circumstantial evidence and questionable at best. Okay? Questionable at best. Now, Buddy, I would expect, I just saw a chat here. Buddy says, why doesn't the White House use VPN or other types of firewalls, etc.? Okay, so first of all, Buddy, firewalls are not going to help with this. A VPN might, because a VPN would essentially take that traffic, put it in a tunnel, send it to another server. That server would then push it out on the internet, and it would look like it was coming from that VPN server rather than the White House server. Why they don't do that, I have no idea. As far as firewalls are concerned, a firewall isn't going to try and mask an IP. That's not a firewall's purpose. So unfortunately, that's just the way. I mean, I personally would think that this would be a big problem. But the big key here, though, is that even if the White House used VPN and firewalls, Tech Executive 1, according to the claims, had a contract to provide these services. So it already knew about the IP addresses. It already knew about these IP addressing and everything else. So he was providing what essentially would be private information, which was put out in the first case, private information about all of these locations. So, now, remember how I was talking to you about Agency 2? So we have Agency 1, which we know is the FBI, okay? But Agency 2 is interesting. Why would Sussman go to Agency 2? And I'm sorry, I'm just taking a forward look here to see if I have anything else highlighted, because again, this is huge. This is so much information. Okay. So why would he need to go to Agency 2? Well, we honestly don't know that for certain. But here's the thing, is that in terms of the conflict of interest, they obtained, as a part of the investigation through Latham, that privileged logs and redacted emails reflect that in the days before issuances of these statements, the Latham attorneys sent, received, or copied on correspondence relating to the drafting and dissemination of the statements. So in other words, he's already basically saying, hey, we have some evidence here that Latham might have had insider information about what we're doing here. And those emails, a lot of them were redacted and withheld because of attorney-client privilege, which is part of our law here. But the thing about it is that because the defendant, Sussman, was aware of and or reviewed the media statements, the government may seek to offer them as evidence pursuant to, and he gives the rule and other provisions that allow the law to establish that the defendant sought to conceal the Clinton campaign's ties to Russian Bank 1 allegations from the FBI and others, which again is the Alpha Bank. Okay. So he also states on this same page, and this is a long one, so this is going to go a little bit longer than an hour for sure. But he also states on this same page that the advice concerning these statements may become at issue in motions in limine. Okay. And I'm not sure I'm pronouncing this, but this is basically saying that in the beginning, which is what in limine means. So Durham is planning on bringing out some of these statements within the trial. Okay. So some of these things that he's kind of being secretive on right now, he's already said he will be bringing out in trial. So this is going to be interesting. Okay. Especially with regards to the conflict of interests, in advising the past events. Now it's got a number 3 at the end of this right here whoops. It's got the end of number 3 right here. So down here, it's according to counsel for Law Firm 1, attorneys at Law Firm 1 and Latham who participated in drafting and reviewing these statements were unaware at the time that the defendant had billed work for Russian Bank 1 allegations to the Clinton campaign. So what he's saying here is that Sussman billed Alpha Bank, also was billing the Clinton campaign for his hours in terms of putting this together. And this is how they've tied Sussman to the Clinton campaign, and is particularly for this work at the time. So now let me see if there's anything else in this. No, it is not. Okay. So we've got Tech Executive 1, who is Jaffe. We have him providing DNS lookup information from several key points where Trump was to Michael Sussman. Michael Sussman takes that information, goes to the FBI, says, hey, we think potentially that there's something going on here. Now, Jaffe admittedly was trying to find, keep in mind, he was trying to find and dig dirt up on Trump. So whatever Jaffe provided was essentially going to Sussman to essentially use him to take it to the FBI. That was Agency 1. So who was Agency 2? Well, this is something that, and I'm just going to, let me close this out. Okay, so who was Agency 2? So Agency 2 is actually, and I'm going to give a hat tip again to Technofog for this. Agency 2 is suggested that Agency 2 is none other than, let me back up, the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, this is getting even more and more interesting, okay? So, again, with the motion relating to the defense terms conflict of interest, okay, the conflict by itself is not the key here, but the fact that the contractor, Rodney Jaffe, who's got deep ties to the Clintons and what appears to be a deep hatred of Trump, had exploited his position with the executive office of the president at the time. This is Obama. He had exploited that to grab all of this data, which he then hands over to Harvard in order to mine it, to kind of bring up something about Trump. Now, whoa, this is really huge. This is really huge. So he, again, I've already read you about the DNS. He collected all the DNS stuff. So we understand that's where he's getting this information. Now, Sussman's attorney, disputed the Durham filing on the 14th. And I've got a link to his dispute, down in the links below. Okay. Now, his attorney disputed it and said that Sussman provided the CIA with executive office of the president data from when Barack Obama was president. Now, this is a problem. Okay, so this is Agency 2 now. So Agency 2 is the CIA. So he didn't get any traction with FBI. So he goes over to the CIA and he says, hey, guys, CIA, you got to take a look at this and investigate this. Now, the funny thing about this is, and Dan Bongino mentioned it on his show, that just before this came out, that Sussman dropped this off to the CIA, at the time, we're going back in time in terms of a few years ago, the CIA actually changed one of their executive orders. The way that the executive order was written, it was changed to essentially change the way the CIA handles information that it obtains from third parties. And one of the things that it changed was the fact that okay, so let me back up for a second. The CIA, honestly, cannot in any way, shape, or form operate on American soil. That's not part of its charter. That's the FBI's jurisdiction. And the FBI is supposed to be the main investigative agency at the federal level for cases like this. Okay. The CIA is supposed to be handling operations internationally. Now, that being said, okay, that why would Sussman be handing this information over to the CIA? The only thing that makes sense is that he's handing it over to the CIA in the hopes that the CIA is going to investigate and show that Trump had connections with Russia over all of this. Okay. Now, his theory, this is Technofog's theory, is that if the Sussman attorney is telling the truth, then we suspect that the EOP data included that from 74 days of the Trump transition period between November 8th, 2016 and January 20th, 2017 inauguration, which essentially is still spying on the incoming Trump administration. Okay. Now, the executive office of the president includes a number of executive councils like the National Security Council, the Office of Management and Budget, and all these other places that support the president. And all of these organizations are involved in transitioning from one president to the next. So here's the thing. If this information is coming from that time frame, then not only do we have a problem with them spying on Trump, but we also have a problem with our national security, because all of these other things are being brought out into light that if this information actually is coming from the transition period, then there could be a lot of information that was transmitted across the internet based on these DNS requests that could have been spied on by more than just the office of the president or more than just the incoming Trump administration. So this is making a question, what about the rest of our national security interests with all of this? So, you know, this thing is huge. This thing is huge. It is bigger. In my mind, it is so much bigger than Watergate. If this continues, if Durham continues down this path and continues to dig, which I have no doubt that he's going to at this point. Now, is anything going to come because of it? That I honestly don't know. Okay. But we need to focus on this. We need to understand what this is and where this is coming from, because to be honest with you, you know, this is huge. This is bigger than Watergate. Watergate was in the grand scheme of things, a simple break-in. And yes, it was an attempt to obtain information on the Democrat National Committee, or the DNC. But this is spying on essentially what became a sitting U.S. president. And what's even more disturbing is to look at this and say, well, wait a minute. Even after the inauguration, did they stop? That's a question that needs to be asked. Did they stop this? I mean, how long was Jaffe involved? How long was his tech organization involved in because the contracts, I mean, it could be 1 year, 3 year, 5 year. It could be any number of years. And all of this information could have started to compile over the entire time that Trump was president. And this is a major, major deal. And the fact that the media is completely silent on this is amazing. In fact, there was a statement put out, and this comes from the Epoch Times. This is an Epoch Times piece where, and let me bring this up. So this is from an Epoch Times piece that came out, not too long ago. I think it came out today, according to the date. Well, I downloaded it from today, but when was it done? It was the 16th. Okay, it was updated on the 17th. And just look at this title here. White House and Hillary Clinton declined to comment on Durham allegations. Okay. Now, a White House spokesperson declined to comment on the special counsel Durham's allegations that Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign and the Democrat National Committee spied on former President Trump's residences and the White House when he was in office in order to bring a narrative to federal government agencies linking him to Russia, which we now know are the FBI and potentially the CIA. Okay. Karen Jean-Pierre was asked 3 separate times, according to this Epoch Times piece, at a press briefing by Fox News correspondent Jackie Heinrich, to answer questions in regarding the allegations. But each time she basically said the president is that there's something that she can't speak from this podium. So I refer you to the Department of Justice. Okay. So the White House is kind of stonewalling. And even though this piece came out on the 16th, the funny thing about it is that Hillary Clinton, let me bring this up. Oh, wait. Seriously, I'm going to have a problem with this? There's no way. Let me open this. Okay. The funny thing is, Hillary Clinton tweeted, let me throw this up here. Hillary Clinton tweeted about it. And let me get it a little bigger for you. So Hillary Clinton tweeted on the 16th. Also, she said at 11:48, so almost noon, she said Trump and Fox are desperately spinning up a fake scandal to distract from his real ones. So it's a day that ends in Y. The more his misdeeds are exposed, the more they lie. For those interested in reality, here's a good debunking of their latest nonsense. And she quotes a piece by Vanity Fair. Big news organization there, Vanity Fair. Oh my goodness. I don't know if I'm going to believe that though. All right. So she obviously now is starting to realize that this might be a bit of a problem, and they're trying to spin the idea that this is a bad thing, that this is not so bad, that it's fake news according to them. But the funny thing about this is that the more Durham digs, the more he brings up, okay, the more that Durham pulls to light. And again, like I said, it starts with a small little string. And he just starts pulling that string and everything starts unraveling. Everything starts falling apart, okay? So this is definitely something that you need to watch. Keep an eye on Technofog's blogs. Keep an eye on Dan Bongino, because I know those guys are going to keep after it. You know, this thing is potentially not just huge, but huge. I'm talking astronomically much more impactful than Watergate ever could be. And the funny thing about it is that if all of this stuff happened with the Clinton campaign, I can almost guarantee you that Obama and Biden, maybe not directly involved, but they knew about it, because Obama was the one that pushed Clinton to get her the Democrat nomination over Bernie Sanders. Okay. Obama was the one that put Clinton up. Now you wonder, and you take a look at how disappointed everybody was and how shocked everybody was at the fact that Trump won, because of the fact that we're dealing with, you know, the whole concept, the whole idea. Hillary Clinton was supposed to be the next sitting president after Obama. Her purpose was to continue Obama's legacy. And assuming that it was Obama that was actually doing the running, I personally think Hillary Clinton has been involved in politics since way back, even when Watergate started, because she was tied as a junior lawyer on the Watergate House committee that was investigating Watergate. So her and her family, the Rodhams, have been involved for many, 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 many years. And so you just got to understand that there is something big afoot here. And Durham is just scratching the surface. He is just getting the surface level stuff at this point. And again, like I said, how they've built RICO cases, you start with the small ones, you work yourself up to the bigger fish. Right now, he's got Danchenko on the hook. He's got Sussman on the hook. He's telling Sussman, you might want to think about your lawyers because they might have some problems and conflicts of interest in representing you. And he's basically giving him that warning. And he's saying, here's some of the things that I have in my possession for evidence. And he's basically saying, I have no problem bringing this out as the beginning in your trial. So he's sending a warning shot across the bow of Michael Sussman. And he's letting him know it's time for you to fess up so that we can get to the bottom of this. I think That's my opinion. That's just my thought. And honestly, this is something that we're going to have to, we are living in history. We are living in history right here. If Watergate was so much of a historical piece from 1972 to 1974 when Nixon retired, we are just now scratching the surface on what is a huge political scandal. Worse than Clinton, worse than Iran-Contra, worse than just about anything, because it's happening here on our soil. The CIA being involved in spying operations here on the U.S. soil, the FBI being involved, the Democrat National Committee, and the Clintons, who she's, making sounds like she wants to run in 2024. And, it's kind of amazing. It's kind of amazing that, Clinton wants to make a run. Trump is already indicating that he's going to make a run. Okay. But Trump's an outsider. And I've said this before, that Trump honestly is, his greatest claim to fame is not his personal life. He has a hard time personal life. Okay. I don't agree with his personal life, his personal decisions. I think that he's got a lot of skeletons in that closet. And in terms of him going in and becoming the president, I think he was a good president. I think he had really good policies. His intent was good. Maybe the delivery was a little hampered by the conditions of the office and everything. Do I think he could do great things given another chance? Sure. Especially if things are in his camp. But I think that his greatest claim to fame, being the president, assuming that he does not, assuming up until now that nothing majorly changes between now and 2024, but his greatest claim to fame for his one term at this point was honestly bringing all of this to light, being the target of corruption, of corrupted people who tried to change the way things happened, and being able to be honest enough to open up the light and shine the light on these bottom-feeding swamp dwellers, I think is his greatest claim to fame. Okay? That, to me, his first term, that's what he did. He exposed the media. He exposed these people. He's exposed, like he said, he was going to drain the swamp. Unfortunately, he didn't get enough time to get it the rest of the way, but he's at least started. He got the start going, and he woke up a lot of people to the corruption that's going on in America's government today. And that, my friends, is my final Whiskey Musings thought for the evening. Do me a favor. I'm going to switch this over. Do me a favor. And again, like I said, subscribe to the channel. If you like the product, if you like what I'm doing, help me out. Subscribe to the channel. Comment on if you see something or it's, suggestions, comments, whatever, put them on, please. I welcome them. The other thing is let's see, a little less than 3 hours, I am going to be, and I've got to pull this up, I am going to be on the True Grit Radio Network doing a music side to this show. This is a big thing for me. I'm getting a shot at internet radio. I'm getting a shot at music. And it runs from essentially 10 to midnight on the Pacific Coast. It'll be midnight till 2 for you East Coasters. And this is part of my expansion and everything else. Shout out to the truckers up in Canada who are dealing with Trudeau's fascism, let's just say. We're seeing a lot of information coming out. I'm telling you, people, this isn't the end. This isn't the end. We've got a lot of stuff going. We've got a lot of stuff that is happening all around the world. This is an incredible time to be alive, and we've got so many different things going on. I have so many different topics to talk about. Next week I'm working on another little story. And I'm trying to come up with, trying to get some of the research and the data for that. I don't want to give away too much, but I'm really excited about it. Anyway, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Do me a favor. If you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe. If you're already subscribed, do me a favor and be my de facto ad people. Go out and reach out to more people. I want to try and grow this channel. I think I'm bringing good content to you. You tell me whether or not that's happening. And we'll see you next time on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.